This is my 2011 Jeep Wrangler Sahara, and it has been rented out full-time on the Turo platform for just about 3 years. In fact, this month is the 3-year anniversary of my time on Turo, and this is the very first car that I ever listed on Turo. But yesterday, it came back on its last ever Turo rental, and as of today, I'm officially retiring the Jeep from Turo, and I am permanently delisting it from the platform. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why I'm delisting my Jeep. I'm going to talk about the factors that came into play for why I'm delisting it, and I'm going to be talking about my plans for both the Jeep and Turo going forward. So let's get started. Man, it is a hot and humid September day in Dallas, Texas. What's up, you guys? My name is Aubrey, and this is my channel. And today I wanted to make a video talking about the Jeep because of the fact that I have talked about Turo a lot on this YouTube channel. In fact, it is the reason why I started this YouTube channel, and I always feel an obligation to be honest and transparent about my experiences with Turo, both the good and the bad. And that's really kind of what prompted me making this video today. You see, I have been on Turo now for 3 years. I have a dozen cars on the platform, and have been able to turn my Turo business into a nearly 6-figure business, which is way more than I ever would have expected from the Turo platform. But just because of the fact that this has been a really good side hustle for me doesn't mean that the business has gone without a hitch. The fact of the matter is, Turo has changed a lot of their rules recently, and as a result, I've had to reevaluate how I want to go about pursuing this business model. Now, this is my Jeep Wrangler, and I have had this car listed on the platform since September 2017, so just about 3 years. And the reason why I listed this car on Turo to begin with was because of the fact that I had purchased this car for myself. I didn't like the car, and as a result, I decided I would give Turo a try. And once I started listing it on Turo, I was quite honestly addicted. I was so impressed with the platform. I loved the platform, and I wanted to do more of it. And that's where I expanded my fleet to 11 more cars, bringing the total to just about a dozen. Over the last 6 months, Turo has changed a lot of their policies that have quite honestly hurt the host. And this is affecting cars like my Jeep Wrangler the most. So first and foremost, we had COVID-19. COVID-19 hit in March, and really it obliterated the rental industry. I'd made a couple videos about this in the past, but during COVID, it was the first time ever where I had all 12 of my cars sitting at one time. And you know, my earnings for Turo went from being $6,000 or $7,000 a month to being a couple of $100s a month, and that lasted really from like March until the end of April, so about 2 months. Then right kind of in the midst of COVID, and whenever all of the Turo hosts were trying to figure out what they were going to do moving forward, Turo announced that they were changing the insurance policies on vehicles. Now, to give you guys some brief backstory, if you don't already know how Turo works, the way that Turo works is I list my car on the Turo platform, and then they connect me with renters who want to rent my car. Now, the thing about Turo is they take a portion of your earnings, and this portion can vary from host to host depending on what insurance coverage you choose. If you want to get like full coverage with 0 deductible, you would have to give Turo 40% of all your earnings. If you don't necessarily care about having 100% of the cost of damage covered, you could opt to give 30% of your earnings to Turo, and they would cover you for some damage, but not all damage. If you wanted to give Turo the minimum amount possible, you could go with like the 85% plan, which means you would pay out 15% to Turo, but they would not cover you under any circumstance if you had damage to your car. For me, I was on the 70% plan, meaning that every single dollar I made on Turo, I had to give Turo 30 cents of that. Now, this for a long time was really kind of a perfect situation because originally I would pay 30% of my earnings to Turo. I would collect 70, they would collect 30. And anytime a vehicle was damaged, they would pay the cost of that damage. And this really was kind of the perfect partnership for me because of the fact that I had quite a lot of cars come back damaged over my 3-year career with Turo. I've had a number of total losses, I've had a number of damage claims, and it was always comforting knowing that regardless of what happened, as long as I followed my steps as a Turo host, I would be covered. But this changed in June and July whenever Turo implemented a deductible. This meant that I would stay on the 70% plan, I would still have to pay Turo 30%, but now anytime damage was done to one of my cars, I had to pay a $250 deductible. This always rubbed me the wrong way because I feel as though if a renter damages my car, I shouldn't be punished for that by having to pay a deductible. But like always, I kind of just rolled with the punches and I was like, okay, that's fine. the $250 won't make or break my business model. I'll be okay. Then in July, Turo changed their mileage requirements. So my business strategy with Turo has been to price my cars as competitively as possible, to make them as cheap as possible, but as a result, there are some kind of costs that come along with that low price. For example, all of my vehicles are one of the cheapest vehicles in DFW, but they also are only allowed to drive 100 miles per day. And if you drive over 100 miles per day, you were typically charged about 75 cents per mile. This meant that if you are somebody who just needs a car to get around town, if you're just going to be driving 50 to 60 miles, my car is the cheapest car for you. But at the same time, the way that I had my mileage structure and the fact that I only allowed 100 miles per day and I charged for anything above that, it really deterred people from driving my cars too far, which would then lead to depreciation, it would lead to higher maintenance costs, it would lead to a number of different negative consequences for me as the vehicle owner. And in July and August, Turo changed their mileage policy. They changed it so that now instead of being able to offer 100 miles per day, like I've been doing for the last 3 years, the minimum amount I could offer was $200 per day. On top of that, Turo would be deciding how much I could charge on my overage miles. So now with cars like my Toyota Yaris's or my Ford Focuses, I can only charge a couple of cents per mile. And for the Jeep Wrangler being a 2011 fully loaded Sahara, I can only charge 15 cents per mile. To give you guys some context, I had this renter who just returned my Jeep and he went over 655 miles. In 1 week, he drove 1,800 miles and he drove 655 miles above the allowed amount. So that means I can charge him for that 655 miles. But from that overage miles and with Turo's new policy, I would only make $65 from that additional mileage. For me, whenever you take into account the Jeep and the cost of the Jeep and all of those sorts of details, the numbers just start to not make sense any longer. So let's talk about some of the specifics with the Jeep and with some of the details that would have really costed me a lot over the years had Turo started doing these policies sooner. So first and foremost is the mileage factor. I already talked about the fact that Turo changed their mileage policy and now it really costs me as a host a lot of money whenever a guest goes overage miles. But this is exacerbated, for example, with the tires. As you can see here, and I don't know if it's focusing, but the Jeep has pretty big tires and there's 5 of them. And to replace these tires costs about $1,000. If every single guest goes over 500 to 1,000 miles and I can only collect $50 to $60 per overage, the numbers just simply don't make sense any longer and it becomes really expensive. You also have to take things into account like other than tires. For example, oil changes, filter changes, wear and tear on the vehicle. Once renters start taking the car way over the miles than were initially intended, that ends up costing me a lot of money. The other thing that's important to take into account is the damage. Like I mentioned earlier, Turo now charges a deductible on damage costs. Now I've had a lot of damage on the Jeep and I will show you a few pieces of that damage over the years. First is this scratch. Now this isn't a big deal. It would cost a couple $100s to fix, but had this happened like this month, this would have cost me $250 from a host perspective with the deductible. Next, we look at the seat. These seats were in pristine condition whenever I got the car a few years ago, and you can see here that the leather seat is starting to tear. Again, not a huge deal, but from a host perspective where I'm trying to make money off of this car, this really eats into my bottom line on profit. And most recently is the windshield. The renter that just took this vehicle for a week-long trip, the one that went over 655 miles, he returned the car with pretty severe windshield damage. As you can see, there is a huge, like my hand for comparison, there is a big, I don't know what happened here, break in the glass, and then there's also a break up here as well. I believe that right now, with Turo's current business decisions, their decisions to take control of the mileage and no longer allow the host to have flexibility with this, I believe that Turo's decision on increasing the minimum mileage that I as a host can allow, I believe that Turo's decision of charging deductibles, I believe that all of these decisions ultimately end up meaning that having a nicer car like a Jeep just no longer makes sense having it on the platform. And because of that, I am delisting it. Now, my plan for the Jeep is to simply sell it. I'm just going to sell the Jeep. I have no use for this car. The goal is to get as close to $15,000 as possible. I would really like to get like $15,500. So once I do sell it, I will end up doing a video breakdown of the exact profit that I've made off of this car over the last 3 years. Now, my plan for Turo going forward is I will still continue to rent cars out on Turo, and I still believe in the business model, but I believe that the business model is best suited for low-end cars, cars that don't depreciate and cars that are easy to repair. So moving forward, in order to continue staying profitable on Turo, in order to continue having this side hustle make sense for me, I'm going to only rent out lower-end cars, things like Ford Focuses, Toyota Yaris's, and products like that. I believe that with a product like a Jeep, a nicer vehicle that costs more to maintain, more to repair, and just more to upkeep, you simply cannot make money off of these cars given the decisions that Turo has made with their platform. All in all though, I know it's been a while since I made a Turo video, but I wanted to make this video because I do think the fact that I'm delisting my Jeep is a kind of big step for me in my Turo business, because this was the first car I ever listed on the platform, and it's been one of my highest rented cars over the last 3 years. Overall, though, I've been asked a lot about my thoughts on Turo's decision to change the mileage limits and Turo's decision to change the deductible policy. And I'm going to be honest, this is kind of the first time ever where I've started to have doubts on the Turo platform. I still believe in Turo, I still believe in the business model, but I really just don't like the fact that they changed the mileage specifically. Whenever they changed their policy on the deductible, I rolled with the punches then. And even though it was a frustrating change, I felt like I understood where they were coming from because they need to become profitable as a company. But to me, the mileage policy and really kind of taking over the host control of mileage was an overstep. And I think it was a mistake on Turo's part. And as a result, I believe that hosts are starting to delist their cars. And I do think that Turo will suffer some consequences from that decision, but only time will tell if they end up restating that rule or what they end up doing moving forward. But you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your comments down below, so make sure to leave a comment. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.